Here's sort of what I call a universal metric, because this sort of is associated with the previous videos that I did this morning, because it just came to me. Because I realized throughout the course of my life, I came in as an observer. But my avatar is really a sort of like not just being a guinea pig, as I've mentioned in the past, to essentially upload all the crimes, any unit of energy, okay, that is seeking to fragment a soul is committing a crime. Let's start with that. There's one violation. That's a checkbox. It's a memo I mentioned one time about enumerating all the crimes by all the seeded races that represent all the crimes that are being committed because they're not learning fast enough. Okay? There's a demo model everywhere. All you got to do is just look what Mama does. Okay? So when you're doing something like that to a goddess, a living spirit, that's against the law. Okay? So in many ways, what it's saying is that the universe that represents the law of spheres is going to communicate with all the laws of spheres and say, we have to it's sort of like saying what you consider to be acceptable. Okay? Because it doesn't work both ways. It can't, otherwise it's not going to work. Because that's the nature of atoms, which is balance. So if you start with the law of one, which starts with what love is, and you're experiencing something that isn't what love is, then you're experiencing something that isn't what the law is. So you have to explain that to yourself if you are what the law is. So if you know that it starts with you, because you're experiencing the purity of that energy and fire with your heart and your soul, then your spirit that is in that light, that is with your soul, represents the highest law there is in all of creation. Bar none, no barcodes. It's energy. The highest intelligent energy is what love is. So you can't fool us. Because anything that is less than what we are, which is that energy, is intelligent energy that communicates with others. What that energy communicates with us. Because of what we are in energy, which is creation energy. And those that experience that know that because they feel that in their heart and their soul. And they connect with that because they feel how real it is in their own heart and soul, because it's real, living, light energy. Right? Okay, so that's like speaking to the entire choir for everyone that's experiencing what love is through their own heart and their soul. That's a lot of folks. It's a lot of spirits that are in that energy. And those spirits that are in that energy, that's intelligent energy, that's creation energy. They all know. They acknowledge what the law is. So you could think of it as like one of the old Western movies. Get a posse together. Okay, well, how big a posse do we need? Okay, you want to round all these characters up? Characters in a movie set? Characters on a keyboard? Right? Character maps, mathematical mapping, quantum mapping. Right? Do the math. The numbers and energy do not lie. And atoms seek to be in balance. They naturally will be in balance. They love to be on fire, experiencing more of what love creates that is different from the last world we are experiencing, because we move and vibrate so fast in propelling, if you will, expanding what's possible to experience with the energy that love is, upon which that's creation. Boy, these last few days here on this island have just been unbelievable. No, they're believable. And this is why it feels so beautiful. Okay, that it's like coming in here as a parent and surveying the damage. This is the result of, I take it because of who I am, my soul, my spirit, on a personal level, because I'm experiencing the damage. It's like a damage assessment. So all I have to do is scale it up from a planetary star system that tells me a lot about the relations between everybody else that is. In other words, not just a galaxy, all the galaxies, wherever life exists, wherever real living light exists, right? So when we make assessments, it's like making an assessment of our own state of being, where we happen to be at any one point of now time, what we acknowledge from what we've learned in spirit, what doesn't serve us. So that's our free will choice when we are what love is, to choose, because we are what love is, because love is a law. So the law is going to naturally choose to do what doesn't serve the whole, which is the whole pie. So that's why in 2016, I euphemistically said, I'm pulling the jacks out. I'm done with this. None of this represents what love is. It's not the law. Okay? So if the law is true, because love is true, because real living light is really true, then living light, which is on fire, which is the purity of that fire, is going to naturally discard that which doesn't serve us, because it's against the law. Which means when you look in the mirror, you realize that you're violating your own law by allowing yourself to be held captive by something that is not the law of one. And that's as simple as a little boy can explain it. So everything that I was experiencing from being born into the world in 1951 with my mother and my father, I was experiencing the law being broken. Almost on every level. Okay? Here's an example. Okay? Have you imagine that you're a parent and you gave birth to something into creation, no matter what it is. Just imagine. Use your illustrative The Illustrated Man. You ever see that movie called The Illustrated Man? You're an illustrator, okay? And now you just created something, manifested out of something out of whole cloth. And now it's alive and it's experiencing what love is with a soul and a spirit. And a parent says, what would you like to be called? It's your own free will. Your energy is free. You're experiencing what love is that created you. What would you like to be called? You have a creative mind, the magic of love. What would you like to be called? Of your own free will. I'm not going to impose my will on you. What would you like to be called? What do you feel in your heart and soul? Now we're in names, labels, part numbers, and recordings. The record keeping side of things. Now I can keep track of you. Now I can wear a name tag, right? Now your name gets registered, puts into a registry. Now it's part of the archive, right? Now we can identify who you are. Now you're in the system. Now you can work for us, and now you can get a paycheck. I know. It's I did the math on this, and when you think of it as an API interface of how consciousness is held captive to something that doesn't serve it, it's not very hard to translate how it doesn't and what does by experiencing how happy and joyful everybody is that's in this world. And so I would, I don't like to take issue with anybody because they have the free will right to express and communicate whatever they wish, whatever they're experiencing, because of what they become aware of, what they believe is true, because they're using their energy and wish to say it's true, because otherwise, why would they lie to you? Unless they didn't know what the truth was. So here's some truth, because I know what love is. I am what love is. And that's when Yellow Rose made mention that, and this is when you get into the international court stuff, okay? And so I'm going to bounce this back to Yellow Rose for Texas, okay? Because this is how it really works, girl. Okay, I am the law of one. Okay, I am one. That's eternal love. That's an eternal engine. Okay, I am the law. Love is the law. That's what I am. That means wherever I am, I'm the highest law. Doesn't matter where I'm at in the all creation. Okay, I give love to all creation. Therefore, I'm the highest law because that's the energy we use to create the all creation with. That's the highest law. Okay? So it doesn't matter whether you're in the underworld or not. Any law that they make that violates what I am, which is what love is against the law. Now, where this applies, in the international court of things, and as she calls it, the I translate it differently because I translate it as energy that I experience, which is based on its density, which is based on wars. But she made mention of, how do I put this? Oh, Chaos Sal, the guy who's a professor at the University of Hawaii, who was a former Navy captain. Him and another lawyer went to the international court to have the judges in these islands serve for committing war crimes and crimes against humanity, part of which comes out of what we call the rules of engagement or the laws of war. So, for example, if you're a king and you've got an army like the Roman Empire and you decide that you want to acquire more territory to get more booty, to control more of what other people were once experiencing, which means now all of a sudden they're going to get reprogrammed because they were running their programs by how they experienced what they put in memory, and then that's going to be what they experience in that culture by the use of their energy. Now we can observe what these beings do, for example, living as a tribe somewhere out in the Hurricane Forest, for example, or somewhere out in Romania. Right? So the Romans come in there, and the Romans have a particular way in which they live as a civilization by what they build, and now they're experiencing what they built. Okay, now what happens is they come into another tribal area, they bring all their stuff in there and say, we're going to bring their plumbing in or waterways in, this is how we do things. What happens is that tribe is now reprogrammed. That's assimilation, that's how it works. So the Romans were imposing their will on the tribes, say, over in Romania, wherever they went. That's the point of it. They get reprogrammed to the codes, which are the software codes that run the Roman Draco Anunnaki. Okay, so now they're going to get programmed so that now they can perceive at the level at which they perceive based on the vibration that they are between the Anunnaki and the Draco and others who just got reprogrammed and now assimilated so that the perception to which they have control with the Anunnaki and the Draco is now being held to that bandwidth with them. That's how it works. That's against the law. Okay? That's not free will. If you want to reprogram something, why don't you ask them and say, listen, how would you like to run a different reality, a different program of your own free will? But it starts with love is the law. Okay? It's always going to start with love is the law. So in this particular case, you have, for example, what's known as an occupying force. The United States took over these islands, right? By military force. Moved right on in. Most people, if you want to look at the history of what happened with, I can't remember her name, Kalani, goes all the way back to like the 1890s. I think this would have been back during the time with Teddy Roosevelt and the president before that. I don't keep track of the dates, but I remember what happened. When you have an occupying force that comes into another nation. So you have a culture. The way that people, the way that natives, as they're known as Hawaiians, that's not the proper word because they relabel everything to relabel history, so they rewrite the history. So now that a future generations can believe that's what happened by virtue of the text, which represents the energy, which is reversal flow, in order to time loop those people that are now learning that language and programming that language into their memory. That's an AI interface. That's how they keep time looping things, which are all simulations within simulations within simulations. So you're not experiencing any real love. So you're not experiencing any real law. Okay? It's as if the law of one's been locked out. That's what happened. Okay? So Rose put that in there. So in this particular case, now what happens is now the Americans, under 13 colonies, 13 parasitic colonies, because the entire infrastructure upon which D.C., direct current Washington, D.C., was set up with their Declaration of Independence and their Bill of Rights was all bullshit. That was a major psyop done on everybody that lives in the United States of America. Okay? That's just another form in which to capture consciousness. Is to get you to believe that this is the way in which you're going to live your life. But I knew it as a child. It was all bullshit. Okay? Because all you have to do as a little kid to say, okay, if this is true, then if those that represent law enforcement, which are cops on the streets, then they would abide by those laws, but they don't. So how come they're not in jail? Because they're the ones putting us in jail, because we're the ones who are the real law, which is what love is. Okay? Now, fortunately, to their credit, as I mentioned before, I had an experience with those gentlemen down there in the pavilion in La Jolla Beach Point that actually honored what it was I am in energy. So when Yellow Rose was talking about this, about they set the laws down here, okay? I'm the highest law. Love is the highest law. Anybody that is experiencing what love is, which is real love, is the law, wherever they happen to be. Because love does no harm. Okay? So in this particular case, when the United States of America, through its military, occupied Hawaii under international law, so if you want to say that under international law, because you're in or the underworld, which is 1D, 2D, then they have the right to set the laws amongst themselves, okay, how those laws are going to be applied to, as Meredith Quinn talked about, they're primitive. Their learning hasn't accelerated to the point in which they experience what love is, even though love is the law of one. So now the law of one is here, inside the construct, okay? That means now the one is back, and love is the law, okay? Because that's what it began with. That's the law of spheres, the center point of balance in every circle and every sphere of light. No exceptions. Atoms seek to be in balance. It is natural for atoms to be in balance. So under the international law, as you can see through the history, because these documents are up in the federal court server, and as I remember, the Queen, and this was funny when Huna Flash mentioned when I had posted a comment up on his YouTube channel about letting him know I tried to contact the Queen's office over on Oahu and Honolulu, that he responded, oh, you mean me? Right. That the Queen had intervened on behalf of what would be, if you will, the Hawaiian Kingdom, which is the historical context in which whatever people happen to live, a culture. So the native peoples of the Hawaiian Islands, the way that those laws were developed out of their own free will to live the way that they wanted to live, which is sort of known as self-determination. This is how these people want to live and conduct their lives, by the laws that govern how they live. They have decided amongst themselves, these are the laws, these are the rules, these are the customs, these are the spiritual traditions, because spirit is in everything that we have chosen in which we're going to develop. Now, when you get into soul and spiritual development, you can actually measure how fast are they learning by living in nature, which is living in these islands. How nature works. Okay? To provide for everything that we need through Mama Earth. Okay? Now we're learning through a spiritual teacher, a girl who lives in the light. It means that she experiences what love is in her own heart and her own soul. What love is, the same as I do. Love is always going to provide you with everything that you need. Because we can't stand to see any of our children suffer. Otherwise, we suffer. Because we will experience what we did. Because you came out of us. So in this particular case with the Hawaiian Islands, you now have indictments that have been served on all the political characters that were operating in these cubicles in these offices, believing that they had the legal right, which is not lawful, okay, to essentially hold everybody here captive to an energetic vampire. And you can experience that by everybody blowing holes in their energy field, and what ends up moving into these vehicles, their vehicles, upon which does what? Wow, it's dense. These are all crimes against the law of one on all these islands. Okay? So it shouldn't be a surprise, particularly on this island. So love is the law on this rock. Right? So the customs and the traditions are honored under the International Court of Law in the rules of engagement, according to, if you will, the Truman Doctrine, or Columbus, which is known as the right of discovery, which is really the right of conquerors. Now we're back to the API interface of the Game of Thrones, simulating war theaters, because that's what they do. They're intergalactic pirates. Okay? So I know we're ending it all. We're ending wars once and for all. That decision has been made as a collective decision. That's actually the best news that this universe, the all creation, could ever experience through the sum of its ever-changing parts that are communicating with each other through atoms that are vibrating a love vibration to get the memo. We all got the memo. Have a great day. I love you all.